Hi guys, my name is Duncan and I am one of the new trainers here at Portside PT. I've already had the pleasure of meeting quite a few of you and I look forward to meeting the rest of you once the gym reopens and lockdown is over. But since we wanted to show you guys how much we value the members, we wanted to provide you with some useful content that might be of value to you during this lockdown period. Now, I'm a personal trainer, but I'm also a nutritionist. I have a master's degree in nutritional science. And I wanted to share with you guys my top 5 nutritional tips for optimizing your immune health, which is quite important at the moment for obvious reasons. Now, full disclosure, I do have a few notes here with me on my laptop, which I'm going to have to refer to. My excuse is that I have a 3-month-old daughter, and in my slightly sleep-deprived state, my brain isn't quite functioning at its optimal level. So if you do catch me sort of looking to the side, I'm just going for a bit of a memory jog with my notes. So before I outline my top 5 tips, I just want to impress that obviously some of the advice I'm going to give you isn't going to be like the most fun. Things like reducing alcohol intake or reducing intake of sugars isn't the most fun advice, but you really don't need to be perfect to gain the majority of benefits in this context. And as a general rule, I recommend people do a sort of 80-20 split, which means, if you're doing the quote unquote right thing about 80% of the time, you can, sort of forget about it and do what you want for the other 20. And in this context, you'll still gain the majority of benefits. So I would really advocate that you don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And in fact, when it comes to immune health, the stress of trying to attain perfection may actually end up being detrimental for you. Now, this being said, your immune functioning or your immune functioning effectiveness is what we describe as a modifiable physiological characteristic. So that means its effectiveness can be increased or decreased according to your behaviors. So if you spend the weekend going out and partying and not sleeping, your immune functioning will likely decrease in effectiveness. Or if you spend the next weekend resting and eating nutritious food, your immune functioning will likely increase in effectiveness. That being said, there is some fairly misleading common vernacular in this context, and you will often see particularly supplements and things marketed at supercharging or boosting your immune functioning. This is a misleading idea. Your immune functioning has an optimized level over which you cannot go. So before you sort of default to going to Boots or Superdrug and buying a bunch of pills and potions and snake oils, I would recommend you try the following, which has been shown in the research and also I've noticed through my own practice to be more effective than defaulting to, vitamin C tablets or multivitamins or whatever your pill or potion of choice might be. So what are my top 5 tips? Well, they are as follows. Number 1, eat sufficient fruits and vegetables. Number 2, eat sufficient total daily calories. Number 3, minimize your intake of refined sugars and processed foods. Number 4 is to prioritize sleep. And number 5 is to keep exercising, but not to overdo it. And I'm going to now outline each of these and explain why it's a valuable tip. So the first tip, eat sufficient fruits and vegetables, is really just general good nutritional or dietary advice. But in the context of immune health, it's really to optimize your micronutrient intake. Now, we could spend a couple of hours going through all the important micronutrients and how they can have a positive or negative effect on immune functioning. But basically, if you follow this general advice of eating plenty of fruits and vegetables, I would recommend between 5 and 10 servings daily. in a sort of variety of colors, you will likely optimize your micronutrient intake. Now, I'm not anti-supplement in this context, but in the vast majority of cases, in the absence of any particular medical conditions, avoiding deficiency is really key here. So, you often have people feel they might have a cold coming on, or the first symptoms of a cold, and they'll megadose on vitamin C, for example, and go buy a big a tube of those vitamin C effervescent capsules and take 3, 4, 5, 6,000 milligrams. There really is very little or even no evidence that this is an effective strategy for reducing the symptoms or the duration of illness. And actually, all you really need to do for optimization is avoid deficiency. Now, a couple of tips on how to sneak more vegetables into your diet. You can do things like having fruit with your breakfast. You can snack on vegetables, things like carrots or peppers or celery or cucumbers. You can do things like sneaking more vegetables into common dishes. If I make a spaghetti bolognese or a lasagna, I might put Mediterranean vegetables or spinach or something like that in there. Now, if you want some more specific ideas, please get in touch with us here at Portside PT. Send me a message and I will blanket you with a ton of ideas in this area. The second tip of eating sufficient calories is quite simple and often very welcome news. We know that rapid weight loss tends to be associated with an acute decrease, often quite significant, in immune functioning. Now, I'm not here to get into the way of anyone's weight loss or body recomposition goals. You can absolutely stay on track here. But if weight loss is your goal, particularly in the context of a pandemic, going into cold and flu season, the wintertime, certainly slow and steady is the best option here. The third tip is to minimize your intake of processed refined foods, particularly refined sugars. Now, this is really for two main reasons. The first is that these foods tend to be less nutrient dense than less processed or sort of more natural foods. So they tend to replace more nutritious calories in the diet, and therefore makes you less likely to optimize your micronutrient intake, going back to point one. And then secondly, these foods have been shown in many cases to decrease immune functioning. Now, the mechanism for this isn't 100% certain, but it does have something to do with chronic low-grade inflammation. And then also, as a sort of bonus point, on the flip side of the last point, overweight and obesity does tend to be associated with a decrease in immune functioning. So, unfortunately, that sort of quarantine weight gain, although completely understandable, is likely not going to be the best for your immune functioning. The fourth tip is to prioritize your sleep, which is correlated directly with immune functioning. Now, in absence of a specific evaluation of someone's diet, there are some things you can do nutritionally that will likely have a really significant positive impact on your sleeping behaviors. So the first is quite simple, and we've already basically covered it. It's to eat a generally healthy and balanced diet, plenty of fruits and vegetables, and minimally processed foods. It's good for immune health and it's good for sleep too. The second is to keep consistent, as much as possible, dietary habits. So if you're used to having dinner at, say, 7:30 in the evening, having dinner at 9 o'clock in the evening or 10 o'clock or whatever will likely throw off your circadian rhythm and negatively impact your sleep. The third is to eat adequate protein, particularly tryptophan containing foods. Now, it's okay if you've never heard of tryptophan before, but simply put, it is an amino acid precursor to both the hormones serotonin and melatonin. Serotonin, of course, being a sort of relaxing hormone, feel-good hormone, and melatonin being the sleep hormone. So if you consume plenty of things like chicken, eggs, turkey, cheese, pumpkin and sesame seeds, foods like that, you will likely have enough tryptophan in your system to produce an optimal amount of melatonin, which will improve your sleep quality. And then finally, you can consume adequate carbohydrate. We know that there is an inverse relationship between insulin and cortisol. So if you eat carbohydrate, your insulin goes up and your cortisol, which is the stress hormone, will come down. So if you are having a bit of trouble getting to sleep, maybe due to stress or something like that, try eating a dinner with adequate amount of carbohydrate, and you may find it benefits you significantly. And finally, a little bonus tip on the issue of nutrition for optimized sleep is to monitor your caffeine intake. Now, God knows we love caffeine here at Portside PT. However, unfortunately, the half-life, the amount of time caffeine stays in your system, can vary massively person to person. So for someone like me, maybe all the caffeine is out of my system within 3 or 4 hours. But actually in some individuals, it can stay in your system for up to 9 or even 10 hours. So that cup of coffee you have after lunch at 2 p.m. might actually still be impacting negatively your ability to fall asleep at 10, 11 p.m. if you are a bit more unlucky in this context. So if you are having trouble getting to sleep at night, I would invite you to consider when you had your last dose of caffeine and maybe bring it earlier in the day, see if it has a positive effect. Guys, the fifth and final tip is to keep exercising, but not too much. We know that any type of overtraining or neurological fatigue can be disastrous for immune functioning. But on the flip side, a sort of lack of physical activity, a lack of movement, can also have a negative effect on immune functioning. So you really want to find that sweet spot between doing enough but not overdoing it. So guys, to summarize, my 5 best top tips for optimizing your immune functioning during this cold and flu and pandemic season. The first is to eat sufficient fruits and vegetables. The second is to eat sufficient calories. The third is to minimize your intake of processed foods and refined sugars. The fourth is to prioritize your sleep and consider the nutritional interventions that might improve your sleep quality. And the fifth one is to keep exercising, but just not too much. You don't need to overdo it to get the benefits of exercise. And guys, just a bonus tip underpinning all of this is to remember to enjoy yourself. Obviously, this is a tough time for all of us, but we're going to get through it, and we'll see you back at Portside PT when lockdown is over, happy and healthy and ready to train. And I look forward to meeting those of you who I haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet. All right, guys, take care, and I'll see you all soon. Bye.